current climate of racism and the protests during these difficult COVID times. We as Muslim Americans also face discrimination and Islamophobia, as our fellow African American citizens also face. Before we dive into the topic, I would like to ask my first question to Zohran. Can you tell us about yourself and your campaign? What do you promise to make our District 36 better?
Absolutely. So thank you so much again, Brother Burak, for having me. I think that, you know, you made it quite clear. I work as a housing counselor. I work with families facing foreclosure, specifically immigrant families, because, you know, many people, specifically from our community, but many communities, they face a kind of double sets of oppression. So they are a homeowner. They face the problems of homeownership, the high costs, the lack of assistance from the state. And then on top of that, they are an immigrant, and they face the difficulties that come with that, with regards to language access, with regards to being given the respect and acknowledgement that they deserve, but are so often robbed of. So for me, this campaign is about one thing. It's about home. It's about making sure that everyone in the state has a place to call their home, and that all of us can truly feel like we belong and can call this our home. Because for so long, we as Muslim Americans have been told that our belonging is conditional. You know, we have been told that, you know, we may think we are from here, but in any moment of national crisis, we could be blamed for any set of problems. And that is something that is not specific to our community, but is one that minorities in this country have faced time and time again, starting with the Black community. And I think that when we talk about what we need to do in District 36, District 36, first of all, is Astoria, Ditmar Steinway, Astoria Heights. It is one of the most rapidly gentrifying districts in New York State. In the last 10 years, the median rent has gone up 30%. So we have a beautiful Muslim community here, but we had an even bigger one years ago. And people have been pushed out because of rising housing prices. So the number one thing I want to do as an assembly person is to pass something called good cause eviction, which would create universal rent control. Because right now there are too many families who do not know that at the end of the year, will they get a lease renewal? Will the landlord increase the rent by $500, $600? And these kinds of things create insecurity in their lives. So that is the number one thing. I would make sure that we have an affordable community for all of us. In addition to that, you know, one of our main issues has been about justice. In this country, the darker your skin, the less justice you receive. And we are just a couple miles south of Rikers Island. And that is a place which has taken so many people's lives and ruined so many others. And we need to fight to ensure that we show solidarity with our Black brothers and sisters and end the forms of oppression that they have faced. Things like cash bail, solitary confinement, you know, elder parole. In this pandemic, we have seen how it feels at some level of what it feels like to be locked in your home. And now let us take that moment and imagine what it would feel like to be locked in a cell for years with nothing but an hour of sunlight. It's inhumane, and these are the kinds of things we must fight to end.
Yeah, I think it is very important topics that you touched, racism and injustice. Perhaps the racism we see from the police department is clear, like straightforward. What about the other type of hidden discrimination at higher level, like perhaps we see from our current president, he gives speeches and rallies that fuels white supremacy. What promises do you make to prevent we all Muslims, Hindus, and all other minorities live in peace and harmony all together? Like perhaps like the higher level discrimination, getting declined for job opportunities or getting declined for an apartment. Like what can you do for us in the district?
I think what we have to do is similar to what housing advocates have done for a long time, which is that they test the discrimination of a landlord. What they do is they have a white client apply for an apartment, and then they have a Black client apply for an apartment. They have all the same qualifications, all the same income, and they see through that what kind of discrimination is going on. And then when you find the results of that, you have to take decisive action. So for example, it was just last year that they had a huge investigation done by Newsday that found racist practices in home ownership and mortgage lending in Long Island. Then when you find the evidence of these things, the state has to make sure that it takes action and makes these people accountable. I think the other thing, Brother Burak, you're asking is, how do we make sure that the state respects us? And I think part of that is that we have to be part of the state. If I win, I would be only the second Muslim to ever serve in the New York State Assembly. There are too many people in Albany who decide the laws for all of us in New York that don't even know who we are as a community. And if they do, sometimes they have no respect for us. And so for so long, we've had people like Brother Masum who've had to go up to Albany and appeal to these legislators to get them to even open their eyes to a problem. Versus if we had our own people, representation from our community, we would not have to convince someone that a problem exists or that they have to take action. So I think that's also part of it.
Yeah, it is really important, like, to tell our own stories.
Yeah.
Like, people in the Albany hear the stories from us, not from other people. It is really great to see you running in the forefront and being an example and telling our stories, being from one of us. That is really important. Also, currently with these crises, we see a lot more value with the healthcare and the hospital systems after getting hit by the virus. I see on your Twitter pictures, your campaign office kind of turned into a place where you distribute a lot of foods, the PPE items. I'm not sure about the numbers, maybe over tens of thousands of items you have distributed in our district, especially our healthcare system, hospital system, and needed the most PPEs. What changes do you propose for our healthcare system so all of us have access to a basic health and access to a doctors?
Yes, I think the first thing that we have to ask ourselves is, I'm very proud of us as a campaign. We've provided over 13,000 meals. We've given out the supplies that people need. But we have to ask, why is a campaign the difference between whether someone will eat or stay hungry? It should not be up to me as an individual to make that decision. The government should be providing for every single person. And I think the way that we do this is we have to, one, tax the wealthy in New York State. There are $30 billion in untapped revenue from the ultra wealthy in our city, in our state. And oftentimes when you say wealthy, people get afraid. They think, is he talking about me? When I say ultra wealthy, I mean people who make more than $5 million a year. There are so many different ways in which we can have fair taxing of those individuals that could then provide for the hospitals. Because right now, we had a budget that was passed that cut billions of dollars in healthcare funding in the middle of a pandemic. And I think that we need to ask ourselves, why are we not taxing the wealthy? Why are we cutting healthcare? And then, with the money that we do have, why are we spending as a city almost $6 billion on the NYPD?
Yeah.
Why is it that one officer's riot equipment can pay for more than 50 full sets of PPE equipment? And in the same city that we have helicopters and tanks and trucks for the police, we have nurses who are wearing trash bags in Mount Sinai Hospital on the Upper East Side.
Yeah, this is really, when I read the tweet and read about the $6 billion budget for the police force, it is tremendous. And that money, you could build a lot of hospitals and a lot of supplies you can provide. It is really important. And perhaps now the most of the protest for our African American fellow citizens, we as Muslims also face the racism. We do a lot of community outreach to increase awareness. And as you're running for us, among one of us, what do you suggest to us that what we can do to increase more awareness, to reduce racism for us, for American Muslims, as well as other fellow citizens? What resources can you provide when you are elected?
I think, the number one thing I would say is that when I'm elected, I would have a platform that I would want to use to fight for justice in every single way. And I would use that platform to amplify the fights that other organizers are organizing around and committing to on the ground. I think another thing I want to mention is that, in this country, it's easy to think that the issue of racism and anti-Black racism is only a white issue, an issue for white people to think about and resolve. But for us, as Muslims, whether we are South Asian, whether we are Turkish, whether we are Arab, wherever we are from, we also have a serious issue of racism within our own communities. Here in America, we have a significant portion of Muslims are Black Muslims, but the way we talk about Islam in this country and in this city, we do not recognize our Black brothers and sisters as being part of the same community oftentimes. And I think that what we need to do is look inward and ask ourselves, how can we ensure that we are fighting against anti-Black racism in our masjids, in our ummah, because there are too many times when, the way we look at Black brothers and sisters in Islam, it's not often a way that comes with dignity. And I think that the change really begins at home. And so that's one thing I would say that we need to do.
Brother Zohran, thank you. I just want to, since you are talking about the racism and other things, what is the demographic status in your district? Because you are comparing, fighting against the incumbent.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can share with us the demographic situations, that might be helpful us to picture the situation there.
So here in Astoria, the last real research set of data was done about maybe 8 years ago. And in that time, it said that there were 20% were Asian, 20% were Hispanic, rather, 13% were Asian, above 60% were white, only less than 2% Black. But I think that what is more up to date is to look at the list of voters that we have in Astoria. In Astoria, to win an election, you need about 6,500 votes to win an assembly election here in this district. We have over 4,400 Muslim voters in this district alone. But the problem is that our turnout as a community is at 7.7%. So there are 4,455 Muslims. In the last election, less than 400 of us came out to vote. And so what is really exciting about this race is we want to double Muslim turnout, but it's very difficult. But we want to do it because we as a community have a lot of power that we have yet to really build and flex in terms of electoral campaigns. And I'm so excited to be speaking to two people who have been working on increasing that power and making sure that our voices are heard. And that's what I want our campaign to do, is build on that organizing and double this number from 7.7 to 15.
Okay, in same token, since you are you have 4,400 Muslim voters. Mm-hmm. Number one, how you are addressing to reach out those people to go to vote because pandemic. Number two, they are still at home. Mm-hmm. And if they want, they can come out if we can reach them out. Number two, there is 60% of white, mm-hmm. as you said. So what are the plans to reach out those people? And number three, there is a big project in your area. Project people normally they are neglected. Elected officials normally don't go. Last congressional election, most of my door knocking was projects, and their main complaint was, "Why is the elected officials? I never see them." So these three things, if you can address it,
absolutely.
Good,
so I'll start from number three. Electoral districts, they cut them in ways that don't make sense. And in our district, they cut out every public housing project. So Astoria houses, they cut it out. Woodside houses, they cut it out. Ravenswood, they cut it out. Queensbridge, they cut it out. They're all in Kathy Nolan's district. But I totally agree. Elected officials neglect people who live in public housing, and we need to change that. The second issue is the percentage of about 60-65% white. What's very interesting is that in America, Arabs are counted as white. So maybe that percent in terms of people who are socially understood as white is closer to 50-55. But what we have been doing is we've been doing the outreach to everyone in the ways that every campaign does. We send pieces of mail, we have posters, we talk to people, we've been doing advertising on Facebook, we are making a video that we're going to launch in the next few days. And we've gotten endorsements from people who have won their votes before. So Cynthia Nixon has endorsed us. Tiffany Caban has endorsed us. These are people who ran in this district and they won with more than 10 points. Tiffany won with more than 60 points. Now, with the Muslim community, the way that we are doing outreach is usually Muslims are not even given the time of day. And what we are doing is we are We are doing things in languages. So for example, we have a poster here which is in Arabic and English. We have another poster here which is in Bangla and English. And these are things which people do not usually see in our community in Astoria. We're sending out pieces of mail that directly address Muslim voters and tell them, this is our time, this is our chance, and that our platform reflects the experiences of our community. So for example, in about a week, we're going to be sending a mailer about the issue of taxi drivers to our Muslim community, because there are so many Muslims who drive taxis, and yet we do not see the importance of that in our elected officials' platforms. They don't talk about Lyft and Uber. They don't talk about driver justice. They don't talk about the fares. They don't talk about the lack of a pension fund, all of these things. And so we're going to make it clear to people that we speak to that reality.
Yeah, I think it is very important as Muslim Americans to participate more. Our numbers is 1.2 million. In alone New York City is 15% of entire New York City. If most of us can participate, we can elect our own congressperson for every single district, or assembly person or senator. That is really important. I participated in several phone banking with you, and I think it is really important for our viewers to know you have phone banking schedules on your website. All of us can participate to help this cause. And every day there's phone banking, I believe, on your website. That is
Absolutely.
really great. What is the most compelling the promises you make against your incompetent lady is in the office now? The differences between you and her. If you could tell us maybe 2 or 3 of them.
Absolutely. I think one of the main ones is, who are you accountable to? When you run for office, you have to fundraise for your campaign, and who you choose to accept money from says a lot as to who you will choose to speak to and refer to when you're making your decisions. We as a campaign have rejected money from real estate donations, corporate donations, and police unions. I'm running against someone who has in their career accepted money from all of those sectors and made a promise 2 years ago to stop taking money from real estate, and broke that promise just 1 month ago. And so I think one clear distinction is, who are you accountable to and who are your donors? Another one is, we need someone who is independent of this political establishment. So many of the pieces of legislation that we need to have passed, things like universal healthcare, single payer here in New York, things like, universal rent control. These are things which have a lot of co-sponsors, a lot of support, but they never come to the floor for a vote, because the Speaker of the Assembly does not want this legislation to come to the floor. And so we need people who are not only unaffiliated with the Speaker, but willing to go after the Speaker publicly and privately to make clear that these demands cannot wait. So I would say 2 of the major reasons are, who are we accountable to, and what community do you come from? Do you come from a community of people who are already in the entrenched political establishment, or do you just come from a community of people who've been unheard in Astoria?
Yeah, that is really great outline and answer. I think you answer most of my questions. These questions were given to us from our viewers, and it was really great. Brother Masum, you have questions you can contribute?
Yes, I have a couple of other issues regarding, are you publicizing all those issues, difference between you and your opponents, number 1. Number 2, what are the situation in response from your audience or your voters to when you do the phone bank? The reason is that, yes, you are fighting against the incumbent, and also your constituent has a lot of Muslim brothers and sisters. So if we can reach to them on the right approach, there's people are saying that you don't have a good campaign issues against your thing, against your election. So what are the steps you are taking it to reach to the people, which is to attack you? Then yes, you are a difference between them.
Can you say the first question again, Brother Masum?
It's like, what are the difference between how you're reaching out to these people
Yeah.
with your campaign? Because there's a report came in that your campaign strategy is not strong enough against her. So what are this?
So I think that what we are doing is that we are making a positive case for our campaign everywhere that we can. And then we explain to people, you know, this is our demand. This is why I can fight for it and make it happen. And then this is why it has not happened yet. And so, for example, when we talk about housing, we say, this is my experience. We're fighting for universal rent control. We're fighting for the cancellation of rent and mortgages. And the reason it has not happened yet is because we have incumbent officials, like the one I am challenging, who continue to take money from real estate developers. And we are making this argument in our mail. We are making it over the phone. We are making it in our text. So, for example, we sent out one mailer so far, and we just talked about who we were. But now every mailer we're going to send is going to have a portion that says, why hasn't this happened yet? And it will say, this is why, because the people who don't want this to happen are funding our opponent. The second thing I would say is the response from voters has been very good. The issue is that we cannot knock on people's doors. And so when you're forced to rely on phone calls, on texts, you talk to far less people. I think the difference in this election is going to be whether or not the Muslim community comes out to vote. If we can get 1,000 Muslim brothers and sisters to the polls over the course of absentee ballot, early voting, and in person, we will win this election. Because we are seeing this is a race right now, which is in the single digits. We are just within touching distance of victory. And now we need to bring in an entirely new set of voters who have never been respected or acknowledged. And that's what we need to do in these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, that is really important. You can perhaps outline the all of us are in different positions.
Yeah.
If you could outline the help and support that we can provide,
yes,
from like a small age to all the way to
absolutely
older of us, like that will be really great.
So we are fighting for New York where there is room for everyone. And we are fighting for it by creating a campaign that has the same idea, that no matter what your age is, no matter what your skills are, there's room and there's a need for you. So if you are a child and you want to help out, we are doing chalking. We chalk all across the streets of Astoria to let people know about this campaign and what we are fighting for. If you want to make phone calls, we do phone banking where we call voters. If you want to write postcards, we have a postcard operation where you can write to voters. We're doing one right now where we're writing to Muslim voters. And if you want to help us, you know, we have 450 posters. And if you know someone who has, you know, a convenience store or a restaurant, we need to put this up, because we have to make sure that when people go to vote, they know that they have a choice on the ballot. And the way they will know is if they hear about us, whether through a postcard, a piece of mail, a piece of chalk, you know, a poster. And we need everyone's help to do that. I'm so happy to say that our fundraising has been very successful. We have raised over $170,000 at an average donation of $39. And in the 10 years my opponent has been in office, she has received less than 150 support from 150 donors in Astoria. In 8 months, we have gotten support from double the amount of donors in Astoria. And so this speaks to that we have momentum, but now, as Brother Masum was saying, how will we get people out to vote? And that's the difference. Because I don't want to look back on these 2 weeks and ask myself, could I have done this? Could I have done that? We need to do everything so that we know that we left every single thing. We did everything that we could.
What is the your posters? Because definitely the hand card will not be able to go to people. How they respond? How many posters you have already distributed in your any number you can tell?
Our first round of posters, we purchased 450. So far, we have put up, I think, about 150. And those are being put up both on people's apartment doors, you know, who are supporters, but also in small businesses. And the beautiful thing about it is it's a double-sided poster. So on the back, we talk about our platform, which is what we want to do during the coronavirus and what we want to do after the coronavirus. And this is something that, you know, we are trying to run an election that meets people where they are at. So if someone does not pick up the phone, if someone does not check their mail, but they go to their local bodega or they walk to the subway, we want them to see who we are and to know that this is what we're fighting.
A couple of suggestions. One is there is a couple of train stations. They're very heavily, so make sure you try to address them when they go to work or come back to work. That helps a lot. Number two, what are these your staff regarding the white to reach out the white people? Is because what I feel, if their own community does not reach to them, for example, minority group, if they don't see the people from their own communities, they normally don't respond. So what are your staff who are reaching to them? Are they from among them or from outside?
I think that I would absolutely will go to the subway stations. I think that with the interesting thing about our communities here is I think that minority communities, because we have never had representation, we are tied much more to identity. White communities, they've had representation forever. And so for them, their tie is a little less identity and a little more ideology. And so what I mean by that is we have a lot of voters here who think of themselves first as progressive voters. And so we reach out to them speaking about our platform, our progressive platform. And you're very right that you need someone in the middle to be a validator, someone to tell them to trust us, believe in us. We've had that with Tiffany Caban and Cynthia Nixon, people who have left voicemails for them. And then people, when we do the postcards, so far we have sent 9,500 postcards. And so we have people's neighbors writing to their neighbors. We have people in the, people who may not know each other, but they come from similar parts of life. And that's the way we make the conversation effective.
And there is a 13% Asian. Are we Bangladeshi considered Asian, or 20% are minorities, right?
13% are Asian, but this is 2012. So I don't know how much has changed since then. But in that time, it was 13% Asian, 20% Latino.
Okay, what about that the Amazon head office in Astoria? How it was affected? Because at that time, I believe in a week or two, house price went to huge jump, and that's why a lot of people are moved out. What are the effect and how the community take it, and what was your position in the Amazon head office?
I was against the implementation of the Amazon head office in HQ2 in Long Island City. I knocked on doors to make it clear to people that they should be opposing it. I shut down an Amazon bookstore in Midtown at a protest. I am someone who firmly believes that we cannot push out working class people from our neighborhoods so that multi-billion-dollar companies can come in to take even more wealth from us, and that we should definitely not be giving them any money to come here in the first place. I think that in the neighborhood, many people, I'll be honest with you, Brother Masum, is that at this point, not many people are thinking about it. But prior to this pandemic, it was on people's minds, and people were happy that it didn't come. Mostly, if you were very wealthy, maybe you were sad. But if you were working class, if you were a tenant or a small homeowner, you were happy because it would have priced you out. At this point in time, people are really talking about two things. One is the rent and the mortgage because of the pandemic. And two is criminal justice and racial justice. But absolutely, that's where I stand on Amazon.
Yeah, because the rent issues, I think you should, if you can address, especially on the rent issue, and your opponent is in favor of that, in those rent control. So she's take the money from those people. If you can target it, that might be a.
We are going to be sending a mailer in about 1 week that makes a clear contrast between the two of us, and makes it clear that you cannot fight for tenants when you take money from landlords who make their money by evicting tenants.
Thank you. That's my all. And anything we can help, let us know.
Absolutely,
we are here too.
It's really great to hear your positions. I myself work for Amazon as a software engineer, and I'm in your same. I agree all your points. Amazon still continue to hire and is still hiring in their Manhattan office.
Yeah,
we were offering them billions of dollars of tax break, and to bring them over here, but they were already here and they still continue to grow without giving them the tax break. And it is really important. I fully agree, and it is really great to hear from you as well. Yeah, and thank you, Brother Zohran. Thank you for joining and giving these great answers. This really help us decide easier. And,
Thank you both
keep
so
working
much.
next 2 days, next 2 weeks.
Next 2 weeks, every day feels like election day now. But I thank you both so much. I will run back to the campaign, but your support has meant the world to me over the last few months and in these next 2 weeks.
Inshallah. We'll see you as a winner, inshallah.
Inshallah. June 23rd.
Yeah, June 23rd. Okay. Everyone go to vote.
Please do.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother Zohran. Thank you,
so
Brother
much.
Masum. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.